Oh, and I can see you. And we both have blurry backgrounds. Yay!
I moved my
Hello.
computer, so I'm like, I'm going to blur out my background.
I know, right? Well, and I'm sitting in someone else's place and there's art behind me, and I'm like, ah,
Yeah, I
it
know.
ain't
Well, there's
mine.
lots behind me, so.
I didn't paint that deer head. I'm a vegan lesbian. Um, anyway,
Exactly.
good morning,
Exactly. Got to
sunshine.
stay within the letters. Got to stay within the letters.
Yes, so nice to see you. Y'all, by the
Right.
way, this is Solange Pollack. She's a dear friend of mine for a long time, and we recently reconnected, and she is a licensed therapist. I'm going to let
Mhm.
you tell the title exactly so I don't screw it up.
We always have the LMFT after our names, those of us that are licensed marriage and family therapists.
That
So
doesn't stand for
LMFT.
like lesbian something.
It's all up to interpretation.
That's what I always say.
That's right.
So I really, really wanted you to come on, as you know, as we discussed, because I trust you. I trust your insight. I trust your judgment with everything for as long as I've known you. I think that you can provide some fabulous insight into the things that we've been discussing here on your Southern Lesbian recently.
Hmm.
So the community here is, we'll call them mature lesbians, at least most of them.
Okay. Okay.
Now that can apply to lesbians of a certain age, or it can be younger lesbians who are mature in who they are. The things that are coming up a lot recently are things like, as we age, especially as lesbians, and let's be real, we are still women. We are still very soft in our core and in our emotional needs. And most of us being in the gay community have gone through a lot to get to this point in our lives, right?
Mhm.
Probably
Yeah.
some complex PTSD growing up, as I learned only, within the last 2 years that I had. Who knew? I just thought I was cruising through life and drinking a lot. So as we, some of us especially are single and learning how to find community and stuff, it gets more challenging. And I just was hoping that maybe talking to you could help shed some light, because we both are lesbians of a certain age. As to some of the patterns maybe that cause this, some of the ways that we land here, and some things that we can think about doing to help us be brave enough to go into the world again.
Absolutely. I think the gay thing is really important, but I think what's so important, Ashley, that you're doing is that this age is a developmental stage that people don't really address.
Oh my
And
God.
it's interesting, it's really important when kids are growing up, all these different stages, and even in the 20s, the launching and the
Yeah.
career building. And then, people have kids and then it becomes, family. But in the elder, like after 45, 50,
Don't be
it's
calling
almost
us
like,
elders yet. How dare
well,
you?
I'm just saying, third, the
Speak
last
for
third,
yourself,
whatever,
sister.
whatever. We're living a lot
Just
older. We
kidding.
look, I'm sorry, but we look
Damn
younger.
good.
Just
I
saying.
mean, I know. You look beautiful
Without
today.
any plastic surgery, I'm
I
I'm
know.
sticking with it. Um, but it's just it's hard. It's hard as we get older because of all of these historic experiences.
Yeah.
And and we don't want to do the same thing over. And we
Yeah.
know we have seen our patterns, right? We've seen them in our relationships. And it's hard because we're drawn to a certain type, if you will, or
Oh, yes.
there is a certain je ne sais quoi,
Uh
right?
huh.
That happens, and we just need to be aware of that. Obviously, it's so individual in terms of how someone shows up, right? In a relationship, in their work and everything they do. I think it's, when we talk about history and trauma in general, we talk about how that trauma affects our assumptions and our perspectives, right? And they are formed over time. And most of the time, we're not really aware of how those historic events, situations from childhood, and all the interactions with family, coworkers, friends, all throughout all our developmental stages
Amen.
affect and become part of the way we form our assumptions and
Yep.
then create perspectives. We
And
don't tend
react.
to challenge, yes. And we don't tend to challenge those perspectives often. They just become part of what I like to refer to as our automatic functioning, which is kind of our patterns of thinking and behaving,
For
right?
sure. I mean, you don't even know
And
you're doing it. You don't know that you're anything but just normal Ashley growing up in the world.
yeah, this is who I am. This
Right.
is who I am. And so oftentimes when people come to see me, it's because three reasons. Either there's an internal shift,
Uh-huh.
there's an external need for change,
Mm-hmm.
or they've kind of like, I've reached my limit and I'm
Yeah.
done.
That was
I don't
me.
want to do it like this anymore.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. I think at that point, what's really important is it's really important to understand your history and
Mm-hmm.
sort of dive into some of those core beliefs about yourself. And it's also really important to learn how to manage them now,
Right.
right? Because we can't erase our past. We can't erase how we've been marginalized,
Right.
um, how our community has been marginalized over years, and it seems to be somewhat of a resurgence of that in more recent years. We can't erase that, but we can think and react to it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Exactly.
all based on the way that we perceive it. And the way that we think about things affects the way we feel, it affects our mood, and ultimately it affects our behaviors. And, I work a lot in cognitive behavioral therapy, but also with a mindfulness base. So
Mm-hmm.
I work a lot in being present, being conscious, like right now, right?
Yeah, I've heard this a
So,
lot recently too, of like that stuff that happened in the past. If you're still thinking about that, that's you still living in the past too. So if you try to stay focused and in the present and practice things like meditation and groundedness and look for
right.
things to focus on in the present, that it helps.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think, one of the things that I find is that, talking about your traumas and your history and these things that have affected you so greatly throughout your life that you may or may not have been aware of along the way, that come up along the way.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Talking about those and processing those is very important because they are a part of who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to be a part of you, and you need to find acceptance in them. But how do you manage how they affect your life emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
behaviorally, cognitively, most importantly, first and foremost? So I really like to address that. So it's really about learning some skills and tools
Absolutely.
to address the individual sort of assumptions and perspectives, you know?
Yeah, and I just want to point out really quickly, y'all. Yeah, Solange did say our community. She's a big lesbian, just like me. So,
Ownership.
listen, I'm just putting it all out there right now off
You
the
know
bat
what?
because
You do
there.
it.
I mean, look, there's again another reason why I came to you because I feel like you're sitting in the middle of it. You and I
Mhm.
have known each other a long time. We've seen each other through some relationships.
Yes, we have.
And
Yes, we
um, and
have.
and and I find that's when these things rear their ugly head, right? Like if you haven't addressed your trauma, those are your chances to practice, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely.
God
And
bless
it's
us
where
all.
it shows, I know, and it's really where it shows up the most as you're
Yeah,
interacting with others. What I always tell people is, we all have our own trains with our own baggage. Baggage doesn't, even though it can have a negative connotation, baggage isn't always negative. We bring a lot of positive baggage, if you will,
sure.
luggage to
Yeah,
the table. And it's just how it interacts with someone else's individual train and baggage. And
right.
when they collide, how do you intermix those two things?
How do
You
you
know,
decide if you're going to downsize to one carry-on or mingle all your oversized bags?
exactly. And how do you mingle? How do you mingle is the question. So, and when the heart is involved,
Uh-huh.
I think that's when it becomes the most difficult for people. And I'm not only
For
talking
sure.
about intimate relationships with,
Mm-hmm.
a partner, I'm also talking about with family. I'm
God,
also talking
yes.
about, close friends and coworkers. I mean, when there is heart involved, there is a little bit of what I like to say blur. We
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden we get a little blurry. We kind of
Mm-hmm.
lose our way in it. It's much more easy to kind of assess and understand things that are outside of our heart zone. But in the
Right.
heart zone, we get a little more, it gets a little more complicated.
For sure. It's
So
like I find myself always wanting to give people the benefit of the doubt if I'm close to them. And sometimes they don't deserve that. You know what I mean? They haven't earned it, or they've broken my trust enough times, or they've proven to me that boundaries are necessary. And
absolutely.
I look, it only took me 50 yesterday years old to learn that, and
Exactly.
it just is like, God almighty. And 6 years of
You
therapy.
Yeah, but
Ugh.
the great thing that I love about practicing mindfulness and mixing that and sort of blending CBT with it is that CBT gives you tools
What is
and
CBT?
mindfulness, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay.
So it basically assumes that the way that you think affects the way you feel, your mood, and then your behaviors or your reactions, right?
Right.
So, but mindfulness is really, I think, is so much, it's so important because it's really about being in the present. So one of the things that people get confused at is like, well, if I'm assuming positive intention, right? So I go into something, someone
Right.
hurts my feelings or someone does something that I feel like crossed a boundary, but I assume I think about it differently. So let's say changing a thought from a negative to a positive, right? We do that or to a neutral. That doesn't cross boundaries. Boundaries are something we have to know for ourselves. What are my boundaries? What doesn't work for me? And I think those are the things that I work on a lot with couples is what are my boundaries, my personal boundaries outside of the relationship, and how do they manifest and mix with my partner's boundaries? And how do we manage those? How do we balance those, right? Or navigate those? And so it's really important, I think, that you understand your boundaries. And, you're dealing with women in
Yep.
our case, right?
Always.
Always, always. And being seen and heard for us is really important.
Yeah.
It isn't
Oh, yeah.
always solving
It's my
the
love
issue.
language.
It's really about being seen and heard.
Yeah.
I don't need, it's oftentimes I hear women say, well, they want to offer me this and they want to solve the problem. I don't always need the problem solved. I need you to see me and to hear me.
Right.
And I think that becomes a big part of it. And when we start to listen, and when I say listen, I mean like active listening, where we're listening to the first word and we're listening to the last word. Because what happens is oftentimes our thoughts, we hear something and someone's still talking, but in our mind, we're already thinking about how to respond. So we miss a lot of what it is they're sharing with us.
Yeah.
So it's really important to be seen and to be heard. And active listening is a skill that's difficult, but it's important in relationships
And
for
you're right,
sure.
it's a skill. It's a practice skill for sure. As women of this age too, as Gen Xers, you're Gen X, I'm Gen X.
I'm a little older than you a
All
bit.
right.
I'm a little bit older. I
Not
might
that
be.
much.
I think I'm on the verge, actually,
We're both
of like,
children. Look at us.
mm,
Anyway,
we're babies.
Gen X lesbian babies, or
Let's
something like
go.
that. But anyway, no, I was just going to say that, like, women I know of my generation, I feel like, we all went through that good girl conditioning and that. Look,
Mhm.
I was raised in the
Polite.
South. I don't know where you were raised, Solange, but it's like any of those communities, and here in London and England for sure, it's like the same type of thing applies. Everybody wants to just be so polite. And that's beautiful. And I think therein lies where I was always giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. And I still like to try to do that with people, but at some point you have to learn, I think, to make sure you're taking care of yourself first and your own needs and your own situation, because otherwise it can get very confusing and you can get
Absolutely.
lost in your
Absolutely.
relationship real fast. Or at least I did.
Absolutely.
one or
Absolutely. And
12
I think
times.
and yeah, and what happens, Ashley, that I find over and over and over, not only within relationships, but individual clients as well, is that we just are in we just get settled into patterns, right?
Yeah.
Which is what I refer to as the automatic functioning.
Yeah.
Those patterns, we just keep repeating them over and over. until we finally realize, we finally gain some insight or something happens that shifts everything. And that's usually when people end up with me, right? Or in the office, they're like,
Yep.
okay, well, I can't do this anymore. Or I keep doing the same thing over and over, and I keep choosing the same person
That's
or the
right.
same people.
Right.
And, that is really a product of, it has nothing to do with anyone else. And that's one of my first things that I work on in therapy is I want everyone in my practice to understand, my clients, everything outside of yourself has nothing to do with you.
Amen.
And
Takes a long time to
everything,
realize that.
it really does. It really does. And really, you are empowered when you move in the world. And that empowerment is I choose how I think about things and how I react to them,
That's right.
right? It's my empowerment.
That's right.
And when you realize that, no matter your past, no matter your traumas and all the events and situations that have occurred in your life, you are empowered to think about things differently, perceive things that maybe were perceived a little differently in your past, want to challenge those things, perceive them differently, and react differently. And that's how people change in relationships. And I say the word change, I am a little bit opposed to change because
Grow.
change is such this big umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
like to think of things more as shifts
Yes.
because we'll shift forward and then we might shift 10 steps back
Yep.
sometimes. And
That's
then we
right.
get really frustrated with ourselves, like, I'm doing the same thing again. People will leave therapy and they'll come back 6 months later and say, I don't know, I think I just need a refresher
For
because
sure.
I'm doing, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, how many years have you been
Right.
functioning in that way?
That's
It's a
right.
warm, fuzzy blanket,
Yeah.
anxiety,
And when you do
depression.
something over and over like that, it just feels normal, whether it's good for you or not good for you. You're so used to it, it just becomes your normal and you don't know any different. And it's
Absolutely.
exactly what you said. It's like you start feeling like, God, am I dating the same person in a different body over and over again? And you're recognizing these patterns and going, or at least that was my case. I didn't know how to get out of it. And I found what happened was that made me not trust my own instincts anymore. And that is
Yes.
what made me so afraid to go back out into the world, go back out into the dating scene. So that you just talked about, that practice, those subtle changes, profound impacts, is
Yes. Yes.
what slowly you learn to have your own back, right? And then you start to just not worry about what everybody else does around you because you realize you got your own back. You go out into the world, and if you don't like
Mhm.
what happens today, well, hopefully there's another day, you
And
know?
there is. And I think that's what's really important is that we realize that the moment that was 3 seconds ago has passed. This is the moment that I'm in. This is
Yes.
the opportunity right now. The
Right.
opportunity isn't what I've lost or what I've gained, but the opportunity is here and now. And, one of the this is sort of my own philosophy and coined thing that I use in my therapy practices, but I call it the double O theory. And for me, it is obstacle opportunity. When something occurs, we can either move right into obstacle land,
Love
into
that.
that, right? And if we do that, we stay stuck. It's
Mm-hmm.
like we keep spinning in the obstacles, in the
Mm-hmm.
barriers that are keeping us from meeting that person or finding someone or fear of that, right? How do we move into opportunity,
I don't
right?
know. That's why you're here.
Exactly. That's
Just
why I do
kidding.
what I do because I love it so much. I love what I do. I think that's the greatest thing is the passion that I have for my work,
Love that.
clients. I don't know, it brings me such joy to see people kind of move through and, evolve in a way and to
Yeah.
kind of come to terms with acceptance. That's a
Yeah.
big thing. Like, okay, so I kind of screw up. So I have a little bit of a temper. What do I need to do? Or I get triggered really easily
Yeah.
by when my partner says this or my parent says that, or, okay, let's work on that.
Yes.
Ownership is really big because ownership is empowerment. And then we gain insight into those patterns, those old, unhelpful
Right.
patterns. And we learn to create new adaptive strategies.
Yeah, and you only really have control over what you're doing. It only took me 11,000 years to learn that too. As much as I would try to maneuver,
Maneuver.
manipulate
Right. I was
the
going to
other
say,
the other
I'll let you go
person.
with that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. But it's like there's only so much you can do, and eventually I finally learned to just let go of the wheel and manage what was going on within the Ashley brain and see if it was any different. And God bless, it was.
Yeah. Good for you.
But so
I
now
mean, the
let's
work is important. The work is
yes.
important.
So now let's say for the ladies that may be listening to this who are in their 50s, 60s, and
Mhm.
they have been through some painful breakups, right? And they are single now, and look, again, we are lesbians, we are women. This is what we do. We fucking cocoon. We get comfortable. We sit back there with our comfies on, and we're just like, I'm not going
Oh, you
back
just
out
let
into
it all
the
go.
world. Exactly. So for
So
those
true.
people, and I'm not talking to those of y'all who are happily single. I know there are a lot happily single too, but to the ones who are
Oh,
telling me what I'm hearing is that, well, I'm afraid, and this is really hard for me, and I'm not sure where to start. I think, I can tell you all the different apps and tools and places you can go, but until this part is dealt with, I think this is what I would love to hear from you, Solange. If they're sitting there at home and they're scared, like what would you do mentally to sort of help yourself process through pushing yourself back out that door again, or pushing me out that door if I was
well,
that
I
person?
can relate to this. I can relate to this. And because I do what I do, I never work in an area that I don't believe in and that I don't
Mm-hmm.
use myself. So I know that when I'm thinking that way, it's around fear. It's
Mm-hmm.
fear of being hurt again. It's fear of what has happened in my past. It
Yeah.
is a fear that that is going to happen again. And so I tend to challenge the thoughts, the cognitions. We're really good at paying attention to the feelings. I'm hurt,
Mm-hmm.
I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm annoyed, I'm overwhelmed. We're really good at being able to label those, but we really don't pay attention to the thoughts that are driving them. And the
Mm-hmm.
thoughts are what put us in obstacle land and
Mm-hmm.
and don't move us into opportunity. Opportunity moves us forward. It gets us in the present and we move forward. We don't stay stuck like an obstacle land. So, it's so important that we start getting in touch and learning what are the thoughts that are driving this fear. For example, if someone says, well, what if I go out there and I don't meet anyone, or I meet the same
Right.
person, or I get hurt again?
Or what if
And
everybody rejects me? What if nobody pays attention to me?
right. And then, I have to ask them, so is that a fact?
Right.
Is that a fact or is that your opinion?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's my opinion. Or if they say, well, it's a fact, I'll say, well, what evidence do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll start to present things. And then what we realize is as we break things down, we realize it's all of these labels. We create our own fear right here.
Yeah.
The
Oh
way
yeah.
we perceive that awful world, that dating world, and everything, and the people that are out there, and what will happen to me. And it's really coming back to ourselves and saying, addressing the fear and being in the moment. Are you going to let everything that's happened in the past dictate your present and
Agreed.
then fortune tell your future
Mm-hmm.
or catastrophize your present
Right.
and your future? No.
Right.
And that comes from the way that you perceive it. And that all comes from experiences, situations that have occurred in which we have experienced these maybe not so great situations, and we have made an assumption and we have formed a perspective. And that perspective is dictating our today, our
Right.
now,
It
right
sounds
here and
like we've
now.
sat on that perspective for a long time and let it
We don't
fester.
challenge.
We
We
don't
don't,
challenge
yes.
it. We don't work through it. And that's why therapy can be so helpful, y'all. So helpful. And it's like, I look at it as too, is to like, well, I mean, here I sit, a single lesbian. And if I don't get my butt out into the world, I'm only, continuing to get older, and it's like it's not going to get any easier. Am I scared? Of course I am. I mean, I'm not superhuman. It's like I've learned that from all my years of therapy is that you feel the fear and you do it anyway. You just
And
learn to
that
step
is
through
moving
that.
from obstacle to opportunity. So
Yeah, but
the
it's the
fear,
practice of that that makes you finally like relax in it. It's terrifying the first time you go out. It is not comfortable.
No,
No.
no. And, the thing is that it's always, we create these horrible images in our mind, right? Of like, what if I go out and I don't, no one
Right.
looks at me, or it's like it's awkward, or I don't meet anyone, or no one like comes up to me and I'm standing by myself, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Um, those are the thoughts
Yep.
that drive us in and hit those barriers and those obstacles, right?
Yeah.
We have to challenge those, Ashley. We have to get to a place where we say, is that a fact? And by the way, what would you tell your best friend that's going out tonight? Would you tell your best friend, oh, you shouldn't go, that's going to be scary, that's horrible, do not
Right.
go, it's going to be a disaster? Of course
Right.
not. So why you would support her
Right.
or him? You would say,
Mm-hmm.
go try it out. What the heck? It'll be fun. It'll be a new adventure. Go with an open mind, right? You would
Absolutely.
do that. Why won't you give that same kindness to yourself? Why can't
Amen.
we give that same positive, opportunistic, in a positive way, information to ourselves? Are we only willing to give that to others, right? It's really about looking inward. And again, fear, anxiety, all these things, they just get created as these warm, fuzzy blankets of protection and familiarity, right?
Excuses. Yeah, it's true. And I think the gay community, especially or the lesbian community, it's like I said, we probably all grew up. I mean, God bless y'all if you had wonderful, accepting parents and an easy childhood. I had to go through some stuff, so the voice that I hear is that critical one still. That's what's ingrained in me from childhood. So it took a lot for me to get
Absolutely.
past that critic coming at me that
Mhm.
finally, I had to go, well, wait a minute. That's somebody else's voice that's been living in my head. Get it out of here.
Yes, people get uncomfortable talking about that inner child, but the reality is, if you think about it, those experiences as a child, as in those formative years, in those very important developmental stages, we form these experiences, these assumptions, these perspectives
Mm-hmm.
based on what the people that we love, that we respect,
Right.
that are caring for us.
Yeah.
We take those opinions in and they matter,
Right.
right? And we grow into these adults and we go out into the world and we learn that it's okay to be who we are, that it's
Right.
okay. And yet, these people that we love, that we respected, that history with them is still present inside of us. That little
Mm-hmm.
girl that looked up to this parent, to these friends, to, relatives who we adored, she still lives inside of us.
Oh,
The
yeah.
difference is the adult child now knows the difference. The adult child can take care of that child. That
Right.
child, those things, we have the answers for those. We can work through that. And I think that's really important. I've had so many clients come back to me, when they're first like, oh, the inner child, okay. And
Mm-hmm.
then, later, through later sessions, they're like, wait a minute, I'm in charge in how I
Right.
think. I
Right.
decide, you know what? I got you. I got you, little girl.
But
You were
nobody ever
little.
told us that, right? When we were growing up, that like, hey, I
Yeah.
want to teach you how to be autonomous and have your own agency and
Yeah.
be empowered to make your own decisions. So, we grow up under somebody who loved us, but was very tough with us, and that
Right.
becomes the opinion that you form about what love is. Therefore, you go out and you seek it out because it just feels familiar, that same pattern.
Yes.
And the
And
universe
and
keeps bringing it to you again and again until you figure it out.
and guess what? It
What?
comes back to their train and
Yeah.
their baggage.
Yeah.
So, one of the
Right. You're
things I
right.
worked so much on is, again, our parents, they
Mm-hmm.
have their own trains and their own baggage.
Right.
Great baggage, the parts that we were able to be exposed to that were wonderful, and the things that were not so great.
Right.
And they show up in that way. And the way that we perceive that is going to affect the way we feel about it. So often
True.
when I think back, I think about my family and I think about there were so many great things. There were also so many not so great things. And I learned to understand that all of those not so great things were also their experiences, their
Mm-hmm.
assumptions, their perceptions, and they just show up like that. It doesn't mean
Based on their parents.
exactly, and their parents' parents. So it's a long line
Yeah.
of baggage
Yeah.
that we carry. So we just have to pay attention to it. And it's really important that we understand what works for us, what doesn't work for us. Again, being in this community, I think, we don't have the same kind of support as someone who is cisgender, let's say, right? We don't have that same kind of support. It's not like you walk into the world and you go, "Hi, I'm a lesbian," and everyone's like, "Wow, that's fabulous." I mean, maybe in bigger cities, in cities where you have like West Hollywood, near where I live, and it's different.
We're
But
very
when you go
lucky.
to, we're very fortunate. And when we go into the world, we don't have that open arm anywhere. We can't just
Right.
walk into the room and feel like, "Woo." So let's not forget that that also has created some of the fear and
Absolutely.
and the hesitation. So these are all the things that become part of our thoughts, our daily thoughts, that create the fear, the anxiety, the depression, and all of these things that we need to pay attention to and we need to work on, right? And I
Yeah.
really feel it's powerful to have tools. Some people come to therapy and they just want to talk, and I hear that and I think that's great, and I'm here for that. And some people are like, "I need help."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need you to tell me what to do. And I
Right.
always say, I can't tell you what to do, but I can certainly, work with you to gain some skills on how to
Right.
address many of these things and pay attention to them.
Exactly. I
So
mean, just learning how to perceive things. It's all perception, like you said. It's like that's what I learned from going through therapy and talking through things with my life coach. It was a life coach. I just learned that it could be a very subtle change in the way I perceive things, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, and then life is
yes,
good again.
yes,
It's
yes. And I think
crazy.
that's why, cognitive behavioral therapy is so great, because it really asks you to pay attention to your thoughts.
Yeah.
How are you perceiving this? Because your thoughts are your perceptions, right? You perceive this is going to be bad. You think you have unhelpful, negative thoughts around it. And the downward cycle happens. It's this spiral. We never have one thought, "Oh, that doesn't look good," and it ends there.
Right.
Or, "Oh, that doesn't feel good." No, it's that doesn't feel good. If I do that today, it's not going to help me. And link and link, we link one negative thought or unhelpful thought to another, and down the spiral we go. And the next thing you know, we feel a certain way, and then our reaction to it follows that mood and that feeling,
I
right?
agree.
So it's really the thoughts, the perceptions, the way we see it. And like you said, just the little shift in so many areas changes. But, in my work, I have to work with a client on learning how to challenge those perceptions that have been set. They're like little
That's right.
boxes. People have put them in boxes and they are locked in.
Oh
So
yeah.
we have to go in and challenge those,
That's
right?
right. And the good
To
news,
shift.
y'all, is if you do this work, with someone like Solange, I found that it affects all the areas of your life because let's be real, if you have these habits of thought, it's not just going to affect area of your life. So it's not just going to affect the way you go out in the world to date. It's going to affect the way your fear-based thinking is going to take hold of other areas too. So once you learn how to deal with it in this area, it for me felt like it opened up so much else in life for me as well, which was really cool and an unexpected benefit that I got from it, right?
Yeah, Ashley, that's very astute of you, because I'll have clients who may be suffering from, pretty severe anxiety. And they'll say to me, after we've been working together for a bit, they'll say to me, "Solange, I didn't realize this is really scary. The anxiety, I thought it was just affecting me in certain areas. But now that I identify my thinking around it, I realize how it affects me in this area, and this area, and this area." And
Right.
so it's like, and in that moment, the fear overwhelms them of like, "Oh, I thought it was just this, but now it's all of this."
Right.
And immediately we address, what's another way to think about that? So it was affecting all these areas. Wow, that's scary. And now you've been able to gain insight. Now you understand. Now you're working on tools. Think of all these areas that will now be shifting in a way that
Exactly.
changes the way you feel and perceive it.
Yeah.
And that is really, profound for people. They'll be like, "Oh, that's true. That's true."
It's
Again,
very
it's
empowering.
perception.
It's very empowering,
Very.
and I'd been waiting for that. I knew that I couldn't trust my own judgment anymore, so I was very excited after I had done some of this work to go, well, I finally feel like I can trust the things I'm feeling again because they're coming through the right filter now.
Right.
You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean,
Yes.
I wish I had learned these tools back when I was in my 20s or 30s, but again, here I sit, today years old lesbian. I'm
Well,
53. It's like I'm doing the best I can, you know, and I think it is important to get my butt out there as soon as possible now that I'm feeling empowered because like I told y'all on A League of Their Own where John Lovett says the way it works is the train leaves, not the station. Guess
that's
who the
right.
train is in this
That's
situation?
exactly. Train is leaving the station
Train is
with
leaving the station.
all the baggage, with
Get your
all the
baggage on
baggage.
that train,
Get your
lesbians.
baggage on that train. Do not slide with another's baggage, train and baggage. Stay on your train.
Yeah.
It's learning about regulating and understanding that baggage. What's
Yes.
useful, what isn't as useful. You're packing your bag. Kind of got to go through what's going to be useful on this trip. If I'm going to the mountains, I'm not going to be taking, well, I might take a bikini for the jacuzzi, but I'm just saying, right? Maybe not a bikini, but maybe a one piece at this point.
Well,
Kidding.
whatever.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it's really just paying attention to what's helpful and what has not been helpful, and gaining that insight is really important, you know?
You're right, and you just said something very important about feeling regulated. That was something that took me a long time to learn too. Is trust that if something is making you feel like even butterflies. I talked about this recently. Are your butterflies healthy, or are they this nervous anxiety that just comes along with dating? You know, the type of people you've dated in the past. Does that
Mhm.
mean love? Maybe not. You know, but when you feel calm around someone, but you do want to spend time with them, I mean, you start learning how to sort of gauge that and go, oh, okay, all right,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not
it's
sure this person is good
identifying.
for me anymore.
Yeah, it's identifying the feelings as they start to come up instead of just rolling with them,
Yeah,
right? Because rolling with them is our automatic functioning. It's what we've done
yeah.
for so long.
Some of them are
So
real cute, and it takes a minute.
it takes a minute to identify those butterflies.
Exactly. I'm like, wait a minute, can I push this butterfly aside for a second?
Yeah, come on, let me just enjoy this for a minute. And then we
Anyway,
shift back, and then we shift forward.
right. Exactly.
I have one friend that she tells her daughter, and I had to have a heart to heart with her because it just really reminded me of how many people come to me who can't trust their instincts because they
Mm-hmm.
were told they were off so many
Yeah,
times in their life,
exactly.
even in work, where you're like, something's not right here. And the boss is like, no, 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 everything's fine. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Right,
When meanwhile, instinctually, So
right,
all along the way, you learn to not trust your instincts,
right. And God bless our
and
parents. They didn't know any better either. They were dealing with
yeah,
their own crap from their,
baggage.
exactly. So
I
I know
always
that they
say,
did the best they could, but it's like, they thought that it was doing a good thing to us kids, when they were like, stop crying, you're fine, whatever it is, those type
yeah,
things of when you really just want that hug, and your parents are like, shake it off, get up,
yeah,
and you're like,
yeah, throw some
okay.
dirt on it. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
you learn to suppress everything,
suppress
right?
everything.
And
Yeah,
then
and
and
then
then
not
there it leads
trust.
to not trusting. Yeah, like, oh, I'm not supposed to feel this. I'm just gonna keep
Exactly.
pushing.
Exactly. And we do
Lord.
it. Do it.
Yeah.
And we get hurt and we get involved with people that do the same thing, and we're not seen and we're not heard.
I
I
mean,
and I wasn't even in it until I was 40. And then
right.
at 40, I meet someone and boom, in 6 months she's living with me. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? So
Welcome. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It's so funny. Well, women are just, we get so emotionally involved. It's like I did date boys in high school and college, but
Yeah.
it's a very different dynamic. It's
Very.
just very different dynamic. And two women just, the emotional connection is so intense. And
I
then when you
know.
have
And
the
it's beautiful when
physical,
it's
it
beautiful.
is. It is.
And when it
But it
isn't,
moves like holy cow.
yeah,
So,
that's the thing that I'm really paying attention to. And it's
right.
hard because there is that part of me that it feels so good in so many ways. It's like
It always feels
conversations
good.
are great. Yeah,
That's
well,
the part you have to learn whether or not you can trust.
yeah, no, it's true. It's true, but it's
Yeah.
like it's kind of like you say all the right things,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Because let's face it, we're all a little origami-ish, right?
Yeah.
We've got all these, and then it's like, oh, by the way, oh, then there's this, and the folds start to unfold, and you
Uh-huh.
see that, and there is that vulnerability of wanting to be seen
Yeah.
for all of you. Like,
Yeah.
I want
Right.
somebody to know
But
my
not too
underbelly,
fast.
but not too fast. No, I want you to know my stuff.
Yeah. Not
But
yet though.
no, but not yet. I don't
Yeah.
need you to know that because I don't really need to know that about you yet.
Right.
I want to slowly, I want it to unfold,
Yeah.
um, and kind of see all the parts and pieces.
People in general who want to be in therapy, you don't have to do it for the rest of your life. I think that
No,
you get your tools, and then I don't think growth is ever going to stop. Hopefully, if you have a growth mindset based on what you've learned, you're going to want to. So life is going to continue to throw you little things to go, oh wait, there's still more to learn.
absolutely. We should always be curious.
Yeah.
There's something that I would love for you to look up. It's
Oh,
called Johari's window.
okay.
4 quadrants, and it's like how we see ourselves, how the world sees us, how we think other people see us, and what we don't see at all about ourselves. So it's like the blind spots that we don't see in ourselves. And it's so important to kind of explore that because how we think the world sees us and how the world actually sees us may be
Yeah,
very different. And
you're
it doesn't
right.
matter. It's not important. I always say it's not really important what other people think about me. What is important to me is, am I putting out the person that I would want to be attracted to me? Like, in other words, I want to find someone that can have conversations that in which they can see themselves or they don't see themselves. Are they willing to step to the plate and say, okay, that's fair. I can see, are they willing to have acceptance and get feedback? I am. I
Right.
love feedback. I'd love for someone to say, sometimes you might be a little intense, or sometimes, I feel like you check out. Like, and
Yeah.
I'll say, you know what, I do. That's fair. Sometimes I get overwhelmed. It's like, and then, but then I need to say, you know what? I hear you and I want to be present for this, but I feel myself checking out. It has nothing to do
Right.
with you. It's my stuff. It's
Or
my
you're
stuff.
just boring.
Yeah, you're
Just kidding.
boring. And I haven't had my damn coffee. I was going to bring my coffee cup and it
Yeah.
says, I had it and then I left it on the counter. It says, so fucking zen on the side of it.
Exactly.
My favorite coffee cup. It's like coffee doses on one side. It says, so fucking
Yes.
zen.
I love it. I love it.
I have a client that's 23. I have another one that's 22 that are in college. And it's not even, there's no stigma around therapy. It's like,
Yeah,
oh
exactly.
yeah,
They
like
expect it,
yes.
which is
And
beautiful.
I figured, they'll say to me, well, I figured, what, I'm feeling a little anxious. So I thought I might as well just get in therapy
Right.
again. It's like,
Right.
no big deal. This is just part of your medical checkup,
Right.
your
Exactly.
yearly
It's like,
exam.
why weren't
And
we
that's what
taught
it should
that?
be.
That your mental
Yeah.
health is so important.
So
It's not
important.
just, hey, go talk to the preacher
Mind and body.
and
Mind and body.
spirit.
I say to all my clients,
Yeah.
if your body is ailing, chances are so is your mind, and
Yep.
vice versa.
That's right.
It's so important
Yeah.
to feel, healthy
Yeah.
physically, mentally.
So where can people find you if they want? Are you open to new clients? I should ask first of all.
I currently have a couple of spots.
Okay.
I have a very limited practice. I love what I do and I give 150% in every session. And so I want to make sure that I'm also caring for myself in this.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. And I'll put it in the notes, you guys. Yeah. And look, maybe at some point you come back on and share more with us down the road if we have other issues
I
to
would love
discuss. I
that.
really appreciate your expertise, and it's always nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too. I'm sorry you're so far away, but that's okay. I
I
forgive you.
know. For now, yeah. Thank everybody for listening to us today. We really appreciate it. Again, this is Solange Pollack. Very much appreciate you and your time, beautiful soul. I think the ladies are gonna love you.
Bye.
See you soon. Okay.
See you soon. Bye.